Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Let me start with a question that might make you uncomfortable. What if I told you that every person you know, every smile you've ever seen, hides a secret fantasy they would never dare to say out loud, including you? Not because it's evil, not because it's wrong, but because it reveals a side of human nature we spend our lives pretending doesn't exist. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you'll understand yourself and others in a way most people never will. And before we dive in, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe, because what we're about to talk about, few people are brave enough to face. Now let's talk about the hidden part of the mind, the one that doesn't follow logic or morality or social approval. This is where our fantasies live. They are not always about pleasure. Sometimes they're about power, validation, or control. Sometimes they're about escaping the weight of responsibility. And the truth is, every single fantasy is a mirror reflecting a deep emotional need we've buried under layers of shame. The first fantasy, the one most people deny, is the fantasy of being completely desired. It's not just about attraction. It's about being seen, fully and without restraint. Men often think this desire makes them weak, but it doesn't. It's a craving for affirmation, to feel like you're enough, to be wanted not for what you do, but for who you are. When this fantasy goes unacknowledged, it doesn't disappear. It leaks into your behavior, into the way you dress, the jokes you make, even how you chase validation in relationships. This fantasy reveals a core truth. Men don't just want to be loved, they want to be chosen. That hunger is primal, it's ancient. And when society teaches men to suppress emotional desire, it doesn't vanish. It transforms into performance. The charming act, the cool guy mask, the avoidance of vulnerability, all of it is an armor built to hide that simple, aching wish to be truly wanted. The moment you stop running from that truth and start owning it, something incredible happens. You stop begging for validation through others and start commanding respect by knowing exactly what you need. That's not weakness, that's emotional power. The second fantasy is darker and far more misunderstood. It's the fantasy of dominance and control. Now, before your mind jumps to the wrong place, understand this. Control isn't always physical or aggressive. Sometimes it's psychological. It's the quiet desire to feel in charge of your life, your emotions, and your circumstances. Men, especially in today's world, often feel stripped of that control, constantly told what to be, how to act, and what's acceptable to feel. This fantasy surfaces when a man's sense of authority over himself has been taken or ignored for too long. You might imagine it as wanting to lead, to protect, to take initiative, not because you want power over someone, but because you want power within yourself again. Control is not about domination. It's about certainty. It's about not having to apologize for being decisive, ambitious, or masculine in a world that often punishes men for those exact traits. Here's the truth. The fantasy of control is born from chaos. When life feels unpredictable, when relationships, jobs, or emotions spiral, the human mind seeks balance through power. And sometimes that power is imagined first, before it becomes real. That's how fantasies work. They are emotional rehearsals for the life we're too afraid to create in reality. But here's where it becomes dangerous. When you start mistaking control over others for control over yourself. The healthy form of this fantasy is about self-mastery, about becoming the man who doesn't need to control situations because he commands his own mind. That's the quiet confidence women can feel when you walk into a room. Not arrogance, but grounded presence. When you suppress that fantasy, it mutates into frustration, resentment, passive aggression, or self-sabotage. But when you understand it, when you channel it into leadership, purpose, and discipline, it becomes a weapon of creation. Every man needs to feel capable, to feel powerful, to know he can shape his world. And here's the uncomfortable secret. Women are drawn to that energy, not because it's controlling, but because it feels safe. A man who owns himself doesn't need to dominate others. He simply moves through the world like he knows who he is. And in a society full of masks and noise, that kind of energy is magnetic. The third fantasy is the one no one admits. Not in therapy, not to their friends, and sometimes not even to themselves. It's the fantasy of being rescued. Now you might think, that's not me. I don't need saving. But pause for a second. This isn't about weakness. It's about relief. It's the quiet wish that someone, anyone, would finally see through the armor you wear every day and say, "You don't have to fight so hard anymore." Men are taught to be saviors, not to be saved, to fix problems, not to be the problem. So when life gets heavy, when pressure piles up, when no one asks how you're really doing, that fantasy creeps in. The fantasy of a person, or even a moment, where you can finally let go, where you don't have to be the strong one, where you can breathe without pretending. It's not about dependence. It's about connection. It's about wanting to be understood without needing to explain. Every man who's ever carried silent pain knows this. The exhaustion of pretending to have it all figured out. The rescuer fantasy is the mind's way of asking for rest. Not from the world, but from the constant pressure to perform, to win, to stay composed while you're breaking inside. When you deny this need, it doesn't disappear. It leaks out in self-destruction, reckless choices, emotional detachment or numbness. Because deep down, your mind is begging for one thing: to feel safe enough to fall apart, just for a moment. But here's the paradox. The moment you stop waiting to be rescued and instead learn to rescue yourself, you become unstoppable. You realize that the strength you were waiting for was already yours, buried under exhaustion, doubt, and pride. And when a man reaches that point, when he learns to hold himself through chaos, he doesn't need saving anymore. But that's exactly when the right people start showing up, because genuine connection isn't built on rescue, it's built on recognition. Two strong people meeting eye to eye saying, "I see you, I get it, I've been there too." That's the real fantasy, not escape, but understanding. And it's one that every man deserves to experience once in his life. What all three fantasies have in common, being desired, being in control, and being rescued, is that they come from the same human core, the longing to feel whole again. Every man, no matter how strong, carries an invisible fracture inside. A wound left by rejection, by comparison, by the silent pressure to always be enough. You learn to hide it with confidence, success, humor, or even indifference. But that fracture never disappears. It just changes shape. These fantasies are not shameful. They are emotional blueprints, signals from your subconscious saying, "This is what I need to feel alive." And yet society trains men to bury those signals, to chase money, status, and pleasure instead of meaning, power, and peace. You're told to be the provider, the protector, the unshakable pillar. But no one teaches you how to be human under all that weight. The danger isn't in having fantasies, it's in letting them define you. Because when you don't understand the story behind them, they control you quietly. The fantasy of being desired can turn into obsession with external validation. The fantasy of control can morph into dominance or emotional withdrawal. The fantasy of rescue can slide into dependency or despair. Each is a mirror, but you have to be brave enough to look into it without flinching. Here's what most people miss. Your fantasies are not a reflection of your flaws. They are reflections of your unmet emotional needs. Every desire points to something sacred, a part of your psyche trying to find balance again. The man who wants to be desired is searching for self-worth. The man who seeks control is craving certainty. The man who dreams of rescue is longing for rest. Once you decode the message behind your fantasies, you stop being ashamed of them. You stop running, and instead, you begin using them as tools, as fuel. The goal isn't to deny what your mind creates, it's to understand what it's trying to tell you. Because when you stop hiding from what you want and start listening to why you want it, that's when you begin to wake up. That's when fantasy turns into awareness, and awareness becomes freedom. Let's be brutally honest for a second. Most men don't fear their fantasies. They fear being seen having them. You're not scared of desire. You're scared of exposure. Because deep down, you know that once someone sees that raw, unfiltered part of you, they hold the power to reject it. And rejection, for most men, feels like humiliation. That's why you keep it locked inside. That's why you play it cool. That's why you joke when you actually want to scream. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Repression is more dangerous than honesty. When you bury what you feel, it doesn't die. It festers, it leaks into the tone of your voice, the way you handle conflict, the kind of women you chase, the risks you take, and the peace you can't seem to find. You can hide your fantasies from others, but you can't hide them from your own nervous system. Your body knows, your subconscious remembers. So what would happen if you stopped pretending you didn't want what you want? If instead of shaming yourself, you studied yourself, with the curiosity of a scientist and the compassion of a friend? That's where growth begins. Not by cutting out parts of your psyche, but by integrating them. You can't become whole by amputating your shadows. You become whole by understanding them. And once you start doing that, something shifts. You begin to realize that your fantasies are not confessions of weakness. They're evidence of depth, of imagination, of courage. You are not broken because you crave power, validation, or rest. You are human. The real strength lies in the ability to own what lives inside you without letting it control you. To say, yes, I want this, but I choose how to respond to it. That's self-mastery. That's the difference between being led by your mind and leading your mind. Every man watching this, you don't need to hide behind indifference anymore. You don't need to apologize for having emotions, intensity, or desire. The world doesn't need a numb version of you. It needs a grounded, aware, emotionally awake version of you. The one who knows exactly what he wants and why. That's the kind of man who can't be manipulated, replaced, or forgotten. Here's the truth most men never hear. Your fantasies are not signs of darkness. They are invitations. Each one is asking you to explore a deeper layer of yourself that's been ignored for too long. You don't need to confess them to the world. You don't need to act on them. You only need to understand them. Because understanding is what transforms desire into wisdom. When you finally look at your inner world without judgment, something incredible happens. You stop being controlled by the parts of you that once scared you. You begin to see that the man you've been trying to become, confident, calm, magnetic, was never meant to be a perfect version. He was meant to be a whole one. Wholeness isn't about perfection. It's about honesty. It's about being the man who can say, yes, I've got desires. Yes, I've got flaws. But none of them define me. Because the truth is, every fantasy you've ever had is simply your psyche whispering, there's more to you than what you've shown. The fantasy of being desired. It's not about ego, it's about wanting to be seen. The fantasy of control, it's not about power, it's about wanting direction. The fantasy of rescue, it's not about weakness, it's about wanting peace. And if you can give yourself those things, visibility, direction, peace, then suddenly you don't chase them through others anymore. You embody them. You become the kind of man who no longer needs external validation because he gives himself what others can't. That's what emotional evolution looks like. You see, most people spend their lives trying to hide their inner world. But the men who become unforgettable, the ones who draw people in without effort, are the ones who have faced their fantasies and turned them into awareness. They no longer fear what's inside, they lead it. So, if you take one thing from this video, let it be this. You're not meant to suppress who you are. You're meant to understand who you are, fully, fiercely, and without apology. Because once you do, you stop living from fantasy and start living from truth. If this spoke to you today, don't leave without hitting that like button and subscribing. There's more to uncover, more to build, and more to become. You're not broken, you're just becoming aware. And that awareness, that's your real power.